I'm Vinny Politan. The subject of my investigation is the drama playing out in real time in Tucson. The abduction of Nancy Guthrie, a case that many thought would be solved weeks ago, but still tonight has investigators stumped. Here's the story. She raised strong daughters, including Savannah Guthrie, host of NBC's Today Show. But in her own home, Nancy Guthrie now stands at the center of a chilling mystery. The 84-year-old was last seen late Saturday night, January 31st. By Sunday morning, she had vanished. Her family found the house disturbed and called authorities. Investigators quickly shifted from missing person search to suspected abduction. Blood identified as Nancy's was found outside, and detectives revealed that digital monitoring tied to her pacemaker and home security systems were disabled overnight. Then came the big reveal. A masked individual caught on camera outside her home in the dark, armed, deliberate. Ransom letters also surfaced, though their authenticity has not been confirmed by investigators. The investigation is scaling back while thousands of tips continue to pour in, and Nancy remains missing. So as Nancy remains missing and still waiting for that big break, that arrest, whatever is going to happen to change the game here, you always have to kind of go back and remember and reflect about some of the facts in the case and the way things have developed here. So let's bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas, who's really good at this stuff. Cody, let's go over that timeline again about what we know here.
Well, yeah, Vinny, we know a couple of things. We know that Nancy was last seen the night of January 31st. That was a Saturday going into the morning of February 1st. She was last seen January 31st after being dropped off by her daughter, Annie, who also lives out there in Tucson nearby. She was dropped off around 9:45 that night. Now, she didn't show up at church the next morning, that Sunday morning. The family went to check on her at the house, found out she wasn't there. She was reported missing by noon on February 1st. But what I want to do now is take a listen to the sheriff talking about a timeline of what law enforcement thinks happened that morning of February 1st. Take a listen.
This is a timeline that we have been able to develop with some of the things that we've had processed. Various pieces of electronics that we've gathered. Sunday morning, early morning at 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera disconnects. At 2:12 a.m., software detects a person on a camera, but there's no video available. They had no subscription, and therefore it would rewrite itself. It just kind of loops, right, and covers up. That's what our analysis teams have told us. We're not done with that. We'll do all we can, but that's what it says. So that detects a person on camera. Could that be an animal? I imagine that's possible. We don't know that. We just have no video. But we're not giving up on that. 2:28. Nancy's pacemaker app shows that it was a disconnect from the phone.
When you say the doorbell camera was disconnected, do you believe that that camera was taken?
We do not have it in our possession. We've not located it.
So then, as this investigation continues to unfold that week, the ransom notes start coming in. Multiple ransom notes at that. An imposter was eventually arrested for trying to take advantage of the situation, but the FBI at the time said they were taking one of those notes seriously. Take a listen to this.
We are aware of a ransom letter that was sent to the local media and then to national outlets. As with every lead, we are taking it seriously.
There have been, as far as we know, I think 3 ransom notes so far, 1 arrest. Are they all different? Do you think there's different authors behind all of them, or?
So the one that went to the media is the one we are currently investigating and working on. The imposter that I talked about, where an arrest was made early this morning, that there will be more information. We believe there's no evidence to connect this to Nancy's case. It was someone that was trying to profit from it, a total imposter.
And we know that note that they were taking seriously demanded $6 million specifically in Bitcoin. That note also had 2 deadlines that have since passed. We're sitting here now 38 days into this investigation, and Vinny, still no Nancy.
No Nancy. and Cody's going to stick with us. This case, at many points, has reminded me of the Idaho case. But in the Idaho case, that knife sheath was left at the crime scene. It was such a big mistake. Which brings us to the first question in our investigation tonight. On this case, what mistakes did the abductor make? Is this a perfect crime? Or were mistakes made? Let's bring in some guests to help us out here. Joining me, former NYPD officer, retired Nassau County Lieutenant and Commanding Officer Mike Gould, and retired police officer after 2 decades, Dr. Mike McCutcheon. All right, Mike Gould, I'll begin with you. What mistakes do you believe the abductor made here?
Well, Vinny, thus far, he hasn't made any mistakes because he's not apprehended. He's not a person of interest as far as we know. I'm hoping deeply that law enforcement is withholding things and they know more than the sheriff, who I've been heavily critical of from the very beginning, of giving ambiguous and conflicting information and pouring fuel on the fire of conspiracy theories. So right now, all leads have to be done, but you know, we can't chase shadows. We can't go to, we looked at this glove that resembled the glove on the video. We spent 3 days analyzing it, and for that to be credible, it just wasn't. It turned out not to be. So right now, there is no mistakes. Will there be? This is not a cold case by any stretch of the imagination, and it will be solved, in my opinion.
Mike, is what you're saying that the abductor may do something from this point forward that could get him
No, I think
caught?
Investigators will do something. Investigators from this point forward will come up with evidence, and there's thousands of bits of evidence that's still. So again, it's not a cold case. They have thousands of bits of evidence, but it's again, historically, crimes of this nature aren't solved in 5 weeks. We were just led down again back to the sheriff. He never controlled his narrative on this case, so he allowed conspirators. There's conspiracy theories now that he did it. That's how crazy this has become.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those. I've seen those,
What?
Mike. All right, Dr. Mike McCutcheon, from your perspective, what mistakes did the abductor make here?
I agree with Mike that, you know, after 20 years, I would think I would be able to pick this apart, but there's not much to pick apart because we haven't caught anybody and we don't have a person of interest. The only error that I could see at this point is by not preparing for the camera. And think of it, as you said, with with Brian's case, where he left that sheath behind. In this case, if we didn't have this video that's playing where he walks up to the camera with his glove on, we'd have zero things to put out to the public. So that would be his only mistake. But I can't really point out many mistakes because I don't know what they're going to be able to find in order to catch or identify somebody. So the only mistake here is that video that's playing where they captured a person on camera. Besides that, there's very little at this point until we know what the analysis of the evidence that's collected or hasn't been tested. And it's, as Mike said, it's just going to come down to police work and knocking on doors and pulling that thread until you find that connection to Nancy and who was there for or why they were there.
Now, Mike Gould, on that video, we can identify the type, the make of the backpack that he's wearing. Some of the clothing, there's been discussions. The mask, there's been some discussions. Mask seems similar to some other ones that are out there, but the backpack specifically, if in fact he purchased the backpack himself, that'd be a huge mistake.
Yeah, the backpack, frankly, I did think was a significant part of evidence or mistake, if you will, because that can be pretty well identifiable. They can track it through lot numbers and where it was purchased, et cetera. But everything else, Vinny, he's described as a person 5'9" to 5'10", medium build. That's half the male population in the United States. So is that a significant lead? There's nothing else except the backpack, which I think, and they may be working on. Again, I have faith in the FBI and the investigators of following through on this. It's just today the sheriff announced they're not using cadaver dogs to search for it. This blows my mind. It actually infuriates me. I don't understand the logic behind it. But yeah, thus far, no mistakes.
Dr. Mike McCutcheon, are you surprised that the backpack has not led to something yet?
No. Whether it was a happy accident or whether it was intentional, using a backpack like that is so common. It's not like it is a unique backpack or a very expensive backpack, something where you can really track it. If you're using I'll say a generic brand, a backpack from Walmart, where there's thousands and thousands, and I don't know how many, it could be 1 million sold, it's much more difficult to track than if it was a high-end backpack that, 500 are sold because they're really expensive. So as a happy accident, they may have unintentionally made it more difficult to track just because there's so many out there. How many have they sold in Arizona that particular week? Could be, in the hundreds or thousands. So I don't think that it's as significant as if it were something that were more easily identifiable, like OJ's Bruno Mali shoes.
And that was until the civil trial that they were able to put the pieces together on that. But if they had that for the first case, maybe it makes a difference, maybe it doesn't make a difference. Mike Gould, does your gut tell you that this is a local suspect or group of suspects here? Or do you think it's possible that they came from out of town, like out of the area, and somehow targeted Nancy, but came from the outside to do that?
Yeah, so I hate to speculate on something like that because that's a whole wide band of possibilities. But I will stick with my prediction from the very beginning, which sadly I feel that Nancy's life was taken very early on, if not within. She never left the house alive. That's my prediction, and her body will be recovered within a reasonable distance, and that's based on history. That's not my psychic predictions. And the body will be recovered somewhere within, maybe 5 miles of the crime scene.
Dr. Mike McCutcheon, do you think it'll be easier? Which is more difficult, to track down the suspect if Nancy is alive or if Nancy is not alive?
Well, there's two answers to this. If they find where her remains are, that's potential for more evidence. So that would be something that more leads just from the evidence that's there. As I always say, having a living person, keeping that person alive, transporting that person is very difficult. And I think that is where it would be easier to track somebody if they're alive, because they have to take more precautions to keep that person quiet, to make sure that nobody sees that person. They have to maybe change behaviors. So it could be either way. If they find the body and they have evidence to go on, that could be great. But hiding a person for a long period of time is difficult.
Yeah, and I'm following exactly what you're saying. It's perfect logic that it'll be easier to get the suspect if he has to keep Nancy alive and keep her hidden. It's easier to find him because it's more difficult for him to get around. However, if you found Nancy, that could lead to the suspect quicker. Interesting.
Right.
Mike Gould, give me your confidence level of this case being solved. 0 to 10. 10, it will be solved. 0, never will be solved.
I'm at an 8. I usually stick with a comfortable 8 because it's been happened before. But it's not going to happen quickly. Somebody knows who did this, by the way. They know who did it. It's just a matter of what is going to compel them to share that information with law enforcement if they haven't already. So it's very unlikely that this is just a complete lone wolf, no family member, no friend, nobody knows. I think on an 8, a scale of 1 to 10, it will be resolved, but it could take many years. I'm working on a case from 25 years ago that I think will be resolved this year on 9/11 of a missing person that disappeared. And I'm very confident with new evidence, because DNA evidence is always evolving. It's always getting better. So what happens today in 2 years from now might be a completely different